Last year, Helen, I rang you up and I said, could you come to Rotunda? And I had one of these delusional moments and I thought, I'm going to get all the best writers in Australia and we're going to talk all the best themes. And you wrote back and said, Bruno, you picked the wrong person, you know. I realised that you weren't into that what you wanted to do was write very much the story that you've just kind of written now, that you were about the personal and you were about the intimate and things like that. And you didn't feel that you were a person that could make the profound kind of large statements about society too. Is that true? Is that...
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that difficult to do that large macro kind of stuff that other writers seem to be able to do?
Well, I just feel phony if I try to do that. I don't... well, it's partly because I don't know anything about history much. I'm very... I feel myself to be rather ignorant. I mean, ignorant about things that you learn at university. I was a really rotten student when I was at university. I was lazy and I was always down the pub and, you know, having stupid affairs with blokes and making myself and them miserable and just not going to... I just didn't do the work.
You should write a book about that stuff.
Yeah, people might like it. Yeah, but I wasted a lot of time. But see, there are some Australian writers who, I think, feel an urge to present Australia to the world in their work. I'm thinking of somebody, maybe Peter Carey or even Tim Winton, perhaps, wanting to present our country to the world as a spectacle. And I'm not interested in doing that. And, of course, those are the sort of books that... those ones that present Australia as if to the outside world. Those books, of course, are greatly appreciated because they're... for some reason people think kind of nationalistically. But I don't have any large... That's another reason why I don't like going on to international writers' festivals. I went to one in Chile once. This might illustrate the point I'm trying to make. Somebody in Chile had a thought of having a Southern Hemisphere writers' festival, and they invited people from Australia, and they had some from Chile, and they had some from South Africa. And a lot of money was put into this. This is the first time I've ever flown first class on any plane, let alone an international one. You know, I mean, Roberta Sykes and I were flown to Chile, first class, and, you know, had champagne and everything. And but when we got there, and we went around university campuses a lot and schools, and there were a couple of South African. Oh well, Nadine Gordimer was there. And a couple of other, you know, I mean, real kick-ass writers from other parts of the world. But we were taken around campuses and asked questions along the lines of, you know, what Australia is and means and you know, and I died 1,000 deaths because I just don't know what to say. But anyway, one of the black African guys was this playwright called Zakes Mda. And we were sitting there having to talk about these kind of lofty nationalistic concepts, and he leaned over to me and he whispered to me and he said, "This is all hot air, isn't it?" And I thought, thank God someone else said this, because I thought it was hot air. And you get to a certain point in when you think about literature in a national way, where you've got to make all these grand statements about the brotherhood of man and I don't know. I just as soon as people start using large, abstract concepts, I bow out. I am out of there at that point. And I have found that although this means I no longer get invited to international conferences, or if I am, I decline, I feel so much more happy and I don't feel like a phony. I really can't stand the feeling that someone's asking me to bullshit and I oblige by bullshitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Candida Baker interviewed you 20-odd years ago in a series
30,
called...
30, yeah,
that long,
time,
gee.
long, yeah.
And part of the conversation in that interview went along the lines of... you were worried about this idea that you thought you couldn't write about the big themes, you know? And you were walking past a window in the shop and there was a beautiful painting of a chair, of Van Gogh, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And you thought, that chair is beautiful, and
It's just
that's
a
kind of
chair,
what I
just
do.
a
It's just
chair.
a chair.
Yeah.
Was that the kind of moment where you went, I'll stay with the personal and the intimate and the
I guess.
intricate?
Well, it was one of the moments when I thought maybe it was all right to, and now I don't worry so much about that because, of course, there are other eternal and universal subjects like death, love, murder, hatred, all those things that I've actually got to talk about in my work, and I haven't had to say, as an Australian, I think, that's what I don't want to say.
Elizabeth Joly, you're a great fan of her writing too, aren't you? And she's very big on this idea of saying, I write about human beings. I can't write about political programs. Yeah. I don't know what's good program to do. Yeah. Is that part of the attraction to her writing because you kind of come from that intimate, personal kind of perspective, you think?
Oh, yeah, I guess. Elizabeth's actually quite a weird writer, I sometimes think. Yeah. I still like her stuff very much, but she was a weird person and a weird writer. I really liked her. She was a terrific woman. Yeah.
I'm weird too, so do you like me as well?
I adore you, Bruno, as you know.
You came to Rotunda and you did the Mind During Love Affair, and again you avoided the big kind of themes,
God,
did you?
I hoped you'd forgotten about that.
That was lovely. No.
But I only spoke for about 4 minutes and everyone else went on for half an hour.
You actually, it goes for about 12.
Oh, really? Oh, that's all right then.
You wrote about the physicality of writing, didn't you? You spoke about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I talked about
and
pens,
the pens,
didn't I?
and you talked about the little tattoo that you got where a pen kind of
you remember
pricked
that.
you and all of that.
Yeah, I've still got it.
I actually listen to the things you say because you're a powerful, impressive woman and I look up to you.
Stop it.
Can you talk about the physicality of writing and also the connection to Elizabeth Joly, because she said whenever she was in classes and there were some people who couldn't write or wouldn't, she would say to them, just get out a beautiful piece of the most beautiful text or novel or poem and just transcribe that.
That's right. So she did. I've forgotten that.
It's great advice, isn't it?
Well, it is. If you copy out a passage that you love or a poem or something, it slows you down. You know, I don't know about you, but I read really fast. I read way fast and way too fast. But if I'm struck by something and I think, I'll just make a note of that and I write it down, the slight laboriousness of writing slows your mind down and you just get the feel of what the writer's doing. Often you notice how a sentence is constructed if you copy it down rather than just reading it and you think, oh my God, that's where she's put the main verb. Or look at that punctuation. It's really quite an excellent
And do you still
thing.
kind of adhere to that? Will you still write by hand with those beautiful pens of yours?
Well, I don't write a book by hand.
No.
I mean, I just take notes at the beginning, but I write in a diary every day, and I write that by hand. Yeah.
And you started off writing diaries, of course, and you know your great book came from that, didn't it? And you know you used to go to the library every day, and you wrote in those exercise books, didn't you? And
yeah, I did.
That became a novel. Is that advice you would give to writers? Write every day, write diaries.
Yeah, I think you should.
And there is
practice.
a beauty in diary writing. It's not just kind of gushing it out. There is style and there's cadence
discipline.
and there's discipline, isn't there? Could you talk about that? Because I think some people think that, she keeps a diary or he keeps a diary and it's just kind of all sentimental and it's something like that. But you don't have that view at all, do you?
No, not at all. I think... what can I say about that? I think I'm probably sort of addicted to writing a diary now. It's how I sort of calm myself at the end of the day and calm myself before I go to sleep.
Is that right?
Yeah, and nearly every day, I write something in my diary. But it's not I feel this and I feel that. It's this happened today, or so I saw so-and-so, she didn't look well, or I heard this news about someone else and I'm going to write it down. And there's a lot of... I think people, when they know you're keeping a diary, people around you sometimes get rather anxious because they think, my God, she's recording everything, and I am. But I try, but I don't do it in a sort of a Spirit. You know, I think people think, you know, oh, I wish I hadn't said that to her in Jimmy Watson's, because she'll go straight home and write it down. But if I did, I'd be writing it down just because it would be part of an interesting encounter. I wouldn't say that. You know what she said? You know, it's not like that, or it's not trying to nail somebody so that it'll all be revealed later. And that's another thing, what happens to the diaries. I don't know, and I dread to think.
You also said that writing is like parenting, and whenever you parent, you're going to kind of do some damage, and when you write, you're going to kind of hurt some people along the way. But we don't stop parenting and we don't stop writing, do we? Tell us about parenting and grandparenting and writing and some of the fallout to some of the things you've written at times and some of that damage maybe, and how you've kind of gone about dealing with that.
Somebody's making a documentary at the moment about monkey grip. The phenomenon of monkey grip, or is that the word I mean? The thing of monkey grip, and it's given me the horrors in a way. I'm not. I know she's interviewed a lot of people.
So she's gone back to all the characters in the book.
I don't know if she's gone back.
Okay.
She's gone back to the main character. That's okay because we're really good friends now.
He turned up, didn't he?
He turned up at my front door. Yeah, I mean, I thought he was going to die. I thought, you know, when I was writing that book with that junkie character,
you hadn't seen him for 30 years.
No,
or something.
I hadn't. Perhaps not quite as long as that.
Okay.
But you know what? I felt. I can't remember what I felt when I was writing Monkey Grip, but I could fancy that I could probably say that I thought he was going to die. I thought he was going to die of drugs, and he didn't, and he got off drugs. He said an interesting thing to me actually once. I said to him, his nickname was Shovers, that's what we used to call him, his real name was James. But I said to him, how did you finally get off drugs? What made you get off it? And he said, you know what makes you give up drugs? Your mother dies. Really? I thought, whoa. I haven't sort of come to the bottom of that remark, but I thought that was psychologically very interesting.
Take us to the moment when Javo turns up at your door, and how did that come about?
This would have been... he lives in Tasmania.
So he sought you out, did he?
Yeah, but he's been in touch with a lot of people from that period. But he just, there's a knock on the front door and I open it and he's standing there and looking a lot more kind of wrecked than he did when I last saw him. But he goes, "G'day, Hells." I go, "Hi, come in." So he came in and we, had a cup of tea, and then I got back in touch with him, and he's married with kids, and I actually went to visit them when I went to Tassie, and So
a little bit of a regret he had was that you should have written more about him.
Yes,
didn't he?
No, he didn't say that.
No?
He said, "You know what I think about that book?" He said, "For a while I thought that book was the worst thing in my life." But he said, "Now I don't think that at all. In fact," he said, "I think you should have kept everybody's real names."
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I didn't press him on the matter.
So will my real name appear in one of your books in a few years' time?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Tell us about Nadine Gordimer and Monstrous Detachment.
Oh.
Why do writers need to have that?
Wait. That's that thing she said in the introduction to her short stories, and I quoted it somewhere?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Oh, you'll have to read it out because I can't remember.
I haven't got the whole quote here. I've just got those two words. Yeah, that's okay. I suppose I'm looking for the writer. Life's happening. It's coming at you, as the French existentialists say. To what extent do I go if I'm there recording and being the journalist and the watcher? Does that detach me? Does that take me out of the game? And to what extent do I want to stay in the game? And how do you balance that, Helen?
Okay, but are you talking about in one's personal life, or? Oh, well, you see, I don't.
Because you spend a lot of time alone. It's a solitary art form.
That's true. It's very solitary, and if you can't stand it, you better not do it.
Absolutely. And you've got your grandkids that you love, and a lot of them come into your stories and that too. How do you balance the amount of discipline that it takes to produce the books and get over that massive kind of effort that it takes, and the stamina and the discipline and all of that? And do you feel that takes you away from the living?
I see what you're asking. No, because it's not like I'm taking notes all the time while the thing is happening. Well, it's not as if no, I don't think
Okay.
So I don't think that detachment is kind of that psychic detachment that will turn you into a monster.
Okay.
I think there are some writers that are monstrous. I mean, probably some people think that I'm monstrous because I've written stuff that hurt them or that they felt revealed by. But maybe, well, no, I'm interested in your question because I haven't thought about it for a while. I'm thinking maybe what you could aim at is to be fully present in the moment and to be able to recall it later enough to write about it rather than thinking, geez, I better write that in my notebook right now before I forget it. I used to do more of that when I was younger. I didn't trust my memory. But
you don't think writing can be a way of kind of distancing yourself from the world?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and I have known people like that.
And you can control the characters and you can do all of that.
Awful. Yeah, that's creepy.
Is there a danger that some writers seek some refuge in writing because the world is too complicated and too chaotic?
Yeah. Well, there is something comforting about writing. I don't mean about publishing so much as about just the act of trying to... Wasn't it Philip Larkin who said that? All art comes from the desire to preserve.
To preserve. You say that in your introduction, don't you?
I was very struck by that when I saw that remark of his, and it seems to me that so many things are really precious and beautiful, and if I don't make a note of them, they'll be swept away by time.
Is that your primary motivation to hold on to those?
I don't know what the motivation is. I'm just hooked on it now.
You don't get clearer as you get older? No?
No.
Wisdom is meant to descend at this point in time, isn't it? That's a cheeky smile.
No, I was smiling because it reminds me of a fantastic poem by William Butler Yeats called After Long Silence.
You're going to quote a few lines?
Oh, I'm going to quote the last two lines. It's a beautiful, but it's a very short poem. It's only about 8 lines, and After Long Silence is the name of it. And it's about talking with someone that I think had been a lover of his many, many years before, and it's just a little poem about a deep conversation late in life. And the last 2 lines of the poem go like this: bodily decrepitude is wisdom. Young, we loved each other and were ignorant. So that's what I have found to be
Is poetry important to you? I've heard Jesuit priests say that their call to action is motivated by kind of poetry. Really? I think when I buried my parents and that, I went to poems first to get some clue. I think of starting a lesson. I go to snippets of poetry. Yeah. Tell us about your relationship with poetry and how it gets into you and stays with you and how you can even remember those lines like that.
Well, if I wasn't sitting here on a stage, I'd probably try and remember the whole poem. Then I'd get stuck in the middle and it would be boring.
And we could bring you a wine
everything.
And we could wait.
No, it's only very short.
Is it?
But actually, thinking about poetry, I was in Germany a few weeks ago, and the people I was staying with in Berlin, they took me out in the country to this place called Ribbeck. And the thing about Ribbeck was that it was the scene of a famous poem by the writer Theodor Fontane. And it's a story about a pear tree. It was about a man who had a pear tree and all the children came and got the pears. And he was a nobleman, I think, and he had a tree and he let it kind of dangle over the fence so that all the poor children could come and get a pear. And when he was getting close to his death, he knew that his son was really mean and he wouldn't let the children eat the pears from the tree. And the old man knew that once he was dead, that was it for the kids and the pears. So he told them that he wanted to be buried with a pear in his coffin. So they put a pear in his coffin and he was buried and time went on. And as the coffin crumbled and everything, this little pear sent up its shoot and it turned into a wonderful pear tree. And once again, the children could eat the pears. And I thought, God, what a beautiful poem. And when we got back to the house, the neighbour came in for a drink and we were talking about this Herr Ribbeck von Ribbeck, or whatever the poem was called, and she said, I remember that, and she ran back into her flat and she brought back this big fat book of, it was a big book of poems for children, but there were some, quite mature ones in there as well. And she she said, "Oh, I'll read it out." And she read out this poem, and I mean, my German's pretty rudimentary, but I knew what it was about. And she read it with a very strong accent of the place of this Riebeck place. And it was just so lovely. And after she'd finished, everybody took the book, all the Germans present took the book and said, "Oh, I'd like to read a poem too." And they read out poems, and it was so wonderful that I was quite moved by it. And I thought, I wish that people did that more often, just read poems, because a poem is so powerful, and everything in it is so, what's the word? It's kind of boiled down to its essence. It's not like prose where it goes on forever. But there's, sometimes you read a poem and it's so powerful you just have to sort of throw the book down and walk away. Do
you want people to throw the book down and walk away when they're reading your stuff as well? I don't mean that facetiously.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because you want an engaged kind of reading, don't you? And you want sometimes for the stuff to just kind of whirl you around, that you need to kind of let go of it almost and go and walk with it a bit.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, well, if anyone says that to me, I'm thrilled to bits. I remember when I took the spare room into the publisher, he rang me up and said, "I've just finished it. I've just been walking around the room mumbling to myself." Yeah. I thought, wow.
It's a lovely compliment, isn't it? Yeah. I've mumbled a lot when I've read your stuff too.
In Italian or English?
Oh, I'm bilingual, and it just comes easy.